What's going on, everybody? Hope you're all having yourselves a wonderful day. We're going to be jumping into some exploring series SCP Foundation goodness here today. We're going to be checking out SCP-3890 Forget Me Not, as I said, by the exploring series. Links, as always, will be down below in the description to the original video without my commentary and reaction, and to the exploring series channel. So please do me a favor, if you enjoy this video as we go through it, click that link, go over there and give it a like. And if you enjoyed the exploring series content and you haven't already hit that sub button on this channel, please do me the favor of going over there and showing the man some love and support. Hitting that sub button on his channel makes a lot of great content for the SCP universe as well as others. If you'd like to join us when we do these reactions live, there is a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description to the YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I offer. We'd love to have you guys come in and join the conversations, add your 2 cents about whatever topics you want to bring up as we go through these videos. So if that has any interest for you, check that out. See if you want to take your sport to the next level. Well, with all that said, jump into the video. Again, SCP-3890 Forget Me Not by the Exploring Series.
SCP-3890 Forget Me Not. We've talked about a large number of terrifying and tragic concepts throughout this series, including fears of isolation, mental degradation, and loss of memories.
Honestly, the reluctant dimension hopper, to me, is probably one of the more like terrifying ideas of like something in the SCP universe, right? Like just the anxiety of knowing, okay, it's been X amount of time, any moment now I'm going to jump to a new dimension. God knows what's going to happen in that dimension, what to be prepared for. You basically can't, you know? And it's like one of those things where at all times you got to have like a little, you know, survival bag and pack and all that stuff with you and ready to go, because God knows where you're going to go to. Could be something cool and chill and be an amazing experience, or could be absolutely the worst thing ever, and you're lucky if you survive. So, like, to me, that's probably one of the more terrifying, like, things of the SCP universe, you know, just that story of jumping around from dimension to dimension, not knowing where you're going to go and when you're going to end up, and then just, you know, the anxiety of knowing at any moment it's going to happen. And when is it going to happen? Is it going to happen in your sleep? You're going to wake up, you know, and be in the middle of nowhere somewhere with some creature munching on your feet or something, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, there's plenty of other creepy ones, but I don't know, for me, I feel like it's just one of the more kind of terrifying concept ideas. But anyway, let's continue.
Those 3 ideas are very real fears in our world, but the SCP universe tends to amplify things by a great degree.
Also, just a quick aside, this picture right here is giving me very much Elden Ring vibes. You know, you've seen the DLC picture, you know, where you see like Mikola on Torrent or whatever, and the spirit fields or whatever with the skidoo tree in the background. Yeah, that give me vibes of this.
It's in SCP-3890 that we'll find all 3 of those fears, as an individual is stuck in an extra-dimensional location by herself and begins to be affected quite a bit by the ordeal.
Yikes.
Unlike most SCP articles, which are compiled by researchers after performing extensive research and testing, SCP-3890 is written as more like a journal by the individual currently experiencing the SCP's effects.
I got you.
Dr. Elizabeth Graham. Elizabeth was transported to this extra-dimensional or extraterrestrial space that she has designated as 3890, but she doesn't know at all how she got here. She had been carrying documentation pertaining to the containment of several other SCPs at the time, but she doesn't feel that those SCPs are related to this one. Her surroundings...
Again, like I said, kind of with the concept of the reluctant dimension hopper, like the idea of just all of a sudden appearing in some other extra dimensional space, not knowing where you are, what dangers there are. Like, I mean, is anything edible where you're at, you know? So it's like, if you run out of rations or something happens, anything you bring with you, what can you eat? What can you like? You know, there's just all kinds of number of survival issues that pop up that are just like terrifying.
surroundings consist of a seemingly infinite desert, with ruins of differing architectural design poking through the sand,
Interesting.
including both modern buildings and ruins of ancient Roman and Arakeshan structures.
Huh.
For reference, the civilization of Arakesh were the ones that contained SCP-2317, the Devourer of Worlds. Elizabeth has explored some of these ruins, but found them to be mostly empty. From what she can tell so far, this location goes through a solar cycle identical to Earth's, leading her to wonder if 3890 is perhaps located on Earth, but is simply hidden from outside view through anomalous means.
Something, yeah, in the future, something
Unlike
like
an
that.
actual desert on Earth, the temperatures are never extreme at day or night.
Interesting.
She's not quite alone here, though, as there are a number of humanoid entities that wander the desert and the ruins. These entities haven't responded to any stimuli, and as far as Elizabeth can tell, they simply walk around without a specific destination.
I wonder if they can see her. They don't respond to any kind of stimuli, so I'm assuming that is supposed to imply like she's tried to talk to them, you know, wave at them, something like that. So whenever it's a situation where not only is she in another dimension, but like somehow is not visible to them in some way, you know, like is somehow kind of like slightly out of phase, so she can't interact with them or they can't interact with her.
Elizabeth can tell they simply walk around without a specific destination, some even walking in circles around buildings.
Interesting.
They are corporeal, however, and based on their appearances, she figures that they also come from a large range of locations and times, both modern and ancient. She also managed to take a knife from the pocket of one of them with no repercussions.
So yeah, it almost sounds like either they, for whatever reason, for whatever reason, either she like can interact with the environment, but they can't interact with her in some way, or I don't know, they're some kind of like semi-zombified creatures. I don't know. The idea though that like it sounds almost like some kind of event happened that like messed with time, because she's saying that, you know, there's ruins of modern cities with also ancient cities of this Arakesh civilization, and that these humanoids also appear to be of modern time but also of ancient time. So I wonder if some kind of time anomaly happened that warped reality here in some way. Huh.
It would seem that, although she doesn't state it directly, she eventually attacked one of the entities, which didn't defend itself.
What?
She then proceeded to perform a field autopsy on the corpse.
That's a little...
as she is a Foundation researcher after all.
That's kind of taking things a little strange. I mean, like, I guess in one hand, I could understand that she's wanting to study and learn about them. And also, I guess, potentially, could they be a viable food source if she's stuck there for a long time? But, I don't know, like, if it's not trying to harm you, who knows what kind of repercussions that could have in the long term? Because maybe this is like some kind of weird hibernation cycle that they're in some way that you don't understand, and when they snap out of it, they're going to know that you killed this, you know, being, and now they're going to be hostile to you. You know what I mean?
And found that they show no differences between a normal human. This leads her to two potential theories. One being that these entities were created by someone or something to perfectly resemble humans, with their mindless nature being the result of an imperfect creation. The other theory is that these are indeed humans, but have lost their mental faculties for some reason.
They could be some kind of weird
The
malfunctioning
final thing
clones.
she notes for now is that none of the entities here, including herself, seem to experience hunger or thirst, as she's been here for 3 days and still feels fine.
Again, that kind of is leaning me to think more of like there's some kind of weird time thing going on. And so she's just not feeling the effects of hunger or thirst because of that.
She's not sure if she doesn't actually need food here or if she simply believes she doesn't. But since she hasn't found any food whatsoever so far, she hopes it's the former.
Yeah, that'd be pretty bad.
In the
then.
next log, Elizabeth describes a different type of entity that she has discovered residing in this location, one of varying shape and size. She's not sure if it's native to this place or was transported here at some point like her, but it appears to be some form of predator, and it's currently hunting her. After writing down the last log, it snuck up behind her while she was resting and attacked her, knocking her unconscious. She woke up several hours later, but it has attacked her several more times since then, every few hours.
So it attacks her, but it's not
She
trying
believes
to
that
kill
this
her?
entity has the ability to mimic any object, and has seen it disguised as one of the humanoids, as a piece of paper, as a star in the sky,
A literal mimic.
building on the horizon,
How do you mimic a star in the sky? Like, okay, it somehow like just flies up into the sky and just makes itself look like a star, or like bends light around it where a star is. So like what? Like, okay.
a fly, and a patch of dirt on her leg. She can't be
patch
sure
of
if it's
dirt on her
actually
leg?
morphing its body into these shapes or just tricking her mind into believing that it's changed, but either way, it's pretty disconcerting.
That's also kind of interesting because, like, okay, so it can mimic a patch of dirt on her leg, right? So that means it's essentially able to like change its mass to mimic other things, right? Which that in and of itself would be super fascinating. So yeah, if it's either it is able to like actually change its mass and size, et cetera, to mimic whatever it wants to, which would be pretty crazy. Or it's like she's saying it's somehow able to make her believe that's what it's doing.
Once it reveals itself and attacks, it takes on its true form, in her words, which appears as some sort of black origami constantly folding and unfolding into itself. These attacks are not physical though, but rather mental, as its power seems to be in amnesticization.
So that would lead me to think then that it's making her believe these things, not that it's actually doing it. Although I guess the idea of like it's an origami thing that's folding in and of itself, so I guess potentially it could change its shape then. Huh. Wonder if
She has
it's
so
some
far
kind of
lost
pattern screamer
memories
thing.
of significant chunks of her childhood and early adulthood, no longer able to remember which high school she attended or what her first job was.
So maybe that's what happened to all these people here. They're like mindless drones that can't do anything and function in any way because whatever this species of creature is has devoured every like consciousness essentially.
She believes that this entity feeds on memory,
Yeah.
and that the other humanoids were people who ended up here like her and lost all of their memories. Elizabeth takes up residence in a mod.
So that also, I wonder if it's a situation then where like this being, or if there's multiple of this being, right? Like, but let's just assume there's just this one being. Like, is it what's causing her and any of the other humanoids here to not have the need to eat, right? Like, it somehow knows when a new being comes into its reality, its domain or whatever, and connects to them somehow psychically through that, and then from then on, like, it keeps them alive until it can, you know, get to them and feed off of all of the memories and experiences that they've had. And then also then, so like maybe that's why all the other humanoids around also aren't dead, because I mean, like, some of the humanoids are just sitting here going in circles, right? And so if they're just going in circles, they're still forming new memories, but then those are new memories that this creature can eat. So, like, is it essentially keeping humans around, these humanoids, whatever, around as like essentially like cattle? Like this is some kind of farm where it keeps all these entities alive somehow psychically by making them not have to eat or and drink, not have those kind of needs, and forces them to do things that creates the memories for it to eat. Interesting, if that is the case, but that's where I'm going so far.
Modern bank. Near a family were people who ended up here like her and lost all of their memories. Elizabeth takes up residence in a modern bank, near a family that had committed suicide, a solution that she believes might be a better option than wandering this location for eternity. She's writing down all of her vital memories in case they get erased from her mind, and she is planning on killing anything that enters the building. So far, she's lost all of her memories regarding how she came to be employed at the Foundation, although she does still remember that she's a researcher with level 3 clearance. She's forgotten many of the anomalies she's worked on, though. She had spent some time traveling in one direction in the hope that she could eventually reach the end of this desert, but she's now given up on that hope. The entity continues to attack her, and it's practically impossible to avoid, since it can even masquerade as a grain of sand. She's not surprised that the location is infinite in size, as she does remember several similar anomalies. Even if it weren't quite infinite, she believes she still wouldn't make it to whatever end there is before the entity drained her of her memories.
Right.
She doesn't believe she'll ever leave now, and she remembers being told horror stories of other researchers ending up in similar situations. These stories were meant as cautionary tales, to warn you of what you shouldn't do in certain scenarios.
So, like, is there a way to kill this thing then? You know what I mean? Like, obviously, she hasn't mentioned anything like she hasn't mentioned any kind of way of fighting this thing. She says, though, that these attacks against her aren't physical. There's some kind of mental thing. So, I mean, it could be a situation where she just isn't able to really defend herself because this thing essentially can ambush her in any way, without her necessarily knowing where it is and where it's coming from. It kind of has like the perfect camouflage kind of situation. And then, yeah, she just gets like knocked out before she can do anything. And it just like feeds off her memories. It's like, I wonder what would you have to do to fight something like that, right? I don't know.
She figures that she's now a cautionary tale, even if she doesn't know what she did wrong.
The only thing I can think of is if you have some kind of nestics that could that were more powerful than what this thing's mind wiping ability is. And so maybe that would be able to keep you awake and able to then physically attack it when it tries to attack you. Or maybe if you've got some kind of like, crazy stimulant or whatever, that you can inject yourself with to pump yourself up so that you don't get knocked out when it attacks you, and then maybe you can physically harm it. Because I would assume that a creature that has some kind of mental abilities like this might not necessarily be so physically imposing. And so she could probably potentially overpower it and kill it physically with, a knife that she has. But who knows?
She's growing more and more paranoid of the entity, constantly examining everything in her surroundings to see if it's actually the creature. She can't remember the last time she let go of her knife, now stained red from testing corpses.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the other thing too, is like, how would you be able to... It would really kind of be a situation where, you're, like I said, you'd have to really use yourself as bait and try to find some kind of way of making yourself resistant to its attack so you could stay awake and then actually get in a physical altercation with it. That seems like, from all the information that we've been told so far, would be the best strategy. Because like if you set up traps, it could disguise itself as a trap. Who knows if any of these physical traps would work? Maybe they'd work against you, you know? When you're trying, who knows? Maybe it could make you see things and you end up just falling in your own trap and killing yourself or something, you know? So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else you could really do.
Additionally, even though she doesn't need food or drink, she does need to sleep, which makes it especially easy for the entity to attack her.
Yeah.
She ponders if this location is some sort of enclosure set up for the entity's benefit,
Yeah, that's what I was
some
saying.
sort of sick game.
I think it's
She
a
writes
situation
down
when
her
this is
name
cattle
multiple
form.
times to keep a record of it in case she forgets. She also hears something crying outside of the building, which is a new occurrence. The crying turned out to come from a 10-year-old child named Tony. According to Tony, he was walking home from the playground when he was transported here, a similar story to Elizabeth's. She wonders if the act of traveling is required for the entity to bring you to this place, in a metaphysical sense, but then says that she doesn't know what she's talking about. Or maybe she does, but she forgot. Tony is, of course, traumatized, and they have barely spoken to one another. She almost forgot what it was like to not be alone. She first
Tony
writes
real,
that
though?
the entity can now hunt them both,
Yeah,
but she
okay.
scratches that out and instead writes that now they can watch for it together, so their survival chances have doubled. The problem is, though, that they're not fighting for survival, but instead for their memories. She's not even sure if people age here, so some of these wandering humanoids could have been here for centuries or more.
Yeah, longer.
She recalls a memory from her childhood that she still retains, of her visiting a woman in a hospital, although she doesn't know who the woman is, possibly her mother or grandmother. She went to visit this woman when she was 12, but the woman didn't know who she was. Elizabeth doesn't remember what happened before
kind of
that
dementia,
memory or afterwards,
Alzheimer's
but
or whatever.
she does remember thinking that it was the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
She wonders if that's why this mimic entity brought her here, because it knows that this would be a fate that she'd fear the most.
Interesting.
She decides to ask Tony when he wakes up.
That would be an interesting aspect if this creature somehow knows and is able to feed off of that kind of fear and uses that as a way to bring them, like anchor them to this reality. That would be pretty fascinating if that's the case. But like I said, I feel like whatever this reality is was created by whatever this entity is, and this is essentially some kind of like farm ground, and these humanoids are just cattle, and he's just farming them for memories to eat. You know?
If he has a similar
And more than likely, new people that come that are rich with a lot of, you know, new memories are probably what it wants to sustain itself most, right? Like that's probably what would be, I guess, most delicious for it, you know, as a way of putting it.
memory, in the hopes of figuring out the rules of this place. Things continue to spiral downward for Elizabeth, though, as the next part of the log shows how much she is struggling mentally at this point. She lists the SCP number as simply SCP, and the object class as object class. She mentions her name as Elizabeth Grant at first, instead of Elizabeth Graham, and the rest of the containment procedures are mostly gibberish, relating to a floating grain of sand and a patch of dirt on her brain. She then repeats her name a number of times and writes that the mimic entity can mimic any object. So far, she has seen it disguise her as Dr. Elizabeth Graham and the Foundation. The rest of the log is similarly constructed of nonsensical sentences comprised of words related to her situation. She writes several times that she doesn't know what she's talking about, and it's clear that it's not just an absence of memories affecting her, but a complete breakdown of her mental faculties.
Yeah.
In other words, she seems to be slipping closer to becoming like the other humanoid entities she's encountered.
Yeah.
In the next log, though, she's regained a surprising amount of lucidity. She reveals that when she woke up the next morning,
You know, I wonder, I wonder what would happen. I mean, it's kind of gruesome, but I wonder what would happen if you would go around killing the other humans that are left there, right? The ones that are just like zombies that have been just farmed into nothing. Like, what would happen if you go around and kill them? Would you somehow weaken it? You know what I mean? If you could kill enough of them, would you be able to weaken it to a point where you could maybe overpower it somehow? Because it sustains itself off of memories, and you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
She's encountered. In the next log, though, she's regained a surprising amount of lucidity. She reveals that when she woke up the next morning, Tony was gone because he was actually the mimic in disguise. She also claims that the mimic wrote the last log, not her, but now she can't even remember her name.
It would be interesting if this creature takes the identity from all of these beings as well. Like, all these humans, takes their identities and goes and poses as them in different dimensions and lives their life or something. That would also be an interesting twist.
She writes that she's underestimated the mimic, as it's smarter than she thought.
Yeah.
Whenever she reads her name on the papers from before, it immediately leaves her head afterwards, much like how anti-memetics work. The last log is written in her handwriting, something else it must be capable of mimicking, and it seems to be getting better at copying her thought processes. Worse, she can't remember how long she's been here now, as she looks at her hands and finds them to be quite old in appearance.
Yikes.
She accepts that she's not leaving this place, and wonders why she keeps writing these logs, since chances are no one will ever read them. She's not going to sit around and hope some magic team will pop out of a portal to save her. Instead, she plans on facing the mimic and killing it. She has her knife, which is the best tool she could hope to find here, and she at least remembers how to use that. In the following log, she lists the SCP's object class as neutralized, and says that it's done, but she won't be leaving this place. Elizabeth walked for miles before the mimic came for her. It was disguised as a cloud this time, and she turned to see it just as it unfolded to attack. She stabbed it as it lunged, and it squealed in pain. It left trails in the sand that hurt to look at, but attacked again and again as she retaliated. She writes that she filled its body with holes, just as it filled her mind with them. It writhed on the ground for several minutes, collapsing in on itself as she continued to stab it. As it finally died, it collapsed into a tiny black ball the size of her thumb. She crushed it beneath her heel. She wishes she would have done that right away. But maybe she had a reason for not doing so that she can't remember now. She feels different after the fight, though. As before, when the mimic attacked her, it took memories right away, but now it feels like her head is leaking out. Her lucidity starts fading, but she writes that she could kill herself right now with the knife to avoid becoming like the other humanoids wandering this desert. She still holds on to life, though, and doesn't want to die. Just as she is convincing herself to do it, her mind slips away completely.
Could be that the mimic's still here,
leaving us with the words, "I don't want to disappear." The final log for SCP-3890 is completely blank. SCP-3890 is similar to some other SCPs that deal with isolation and mental breakdown, such as SCP-3001, the Red Reality, but leaves us with absolutely no hope for Elizabeth's recovery. She was taken to this place through no fault or mistake of her own at a young age, and despite her best efforts and hopes to somehow beat it, she slowly slipped away. Obviously, there are correlations to real-world conditions that affect an individual's mental faculties and memories, which Elizabeth herself alluded to being a fear of hers. This lends an additional level of horror to the article, a scenario that many of us might not be able to relate to directly, but can at least appreciate its terrifying nature. There are a lot of unanswered questions left from this one, such as why Elizabeth was drawn in at all, did she really manage to kill the Mimic, and how did the Foundation get a hold of these documents?
Yep.
Still, it's effective at depicting a tragic and horrific scenario in which the fear isn't necessarily other people forgetting you, but you forgetting yourself.
Quote, I could kill myself right now. I still have the knife. It's not the cleanest way to go, but I could cut my throat and make my exit. But the thing is, I don't want to die. I look up at the people here, wandering forever, eyes burnt out from looking up at the sun. And all I can think is I don't want to die. I can still do it. There's time. So easy. I can do it. Just do it. I should. Just, I don't want these, I don't know what these words mean. I don't want to disappear. Interesting story. I mean, it's definitely kind of, there's several things that this can kind of like allude to, you know, obviously, as it was mentioned in this, you know, dementia, Alzheimer's, you know, those kind of conditions that can eat away at your brain and mental function and essentially leave you trapped in your body without knowing who you are and, you know, things like that. But it also could essentially be kind of an analogy of just old age, you know, like you can't escape old age no matter what, you know, kind of a situation. And it always comes for us in the end, you know, time is always against us, you know. So, I mean, it does obviously make you wonder, you know, did she really kill the Mimic? Is it a situation where killing the Mimic is actually what all of these people have done, and that's why they're left in that state? You know, is it actually some kind of thing where these creatures, if you left them alive, have some kind of symbiotic relationship with you, but if you kill them, you know, because like maybe they don't have an identity or memories of their own, so that's how they have to exist, is by living and copying, you know, your memories and living through you. But then if you kill them, it's taken a part of you, so you just go away and become these hollowed husks, you know, kind of a situation. And yeah, you know, how did the Foundation get these notes? You would assume that someone in the SCP Foundation probably got put in a similar situation and somehow got out. But yeah, fascinating and interesting story. And yeah, just, you know, that fear of, you know, what are you without your memories? Your experiences are, you know, we are essentially the sum of our experiences kind of a situation. And without those, who and what are we, you know? And the Mimic is kind of an actual like physical manifestation of those kind of fears of losing yourself. So fascinating story. Yeah, so that was the Exploring series, SCP-3890 Forget Me Not. Links as always will be down below in the description to the original video without my commentary and reaction, and to the Exploring series channel. Please do me a favor, if you enjoyed this video, click that link, give it a like, and if you enjoy the Exploring series content, go over there and give that man a sub if you haven't hit that sub button on his channel already. He makes a lot of wonderful content for the SCP universe. He definitely deserves it. If you'd like to join us when we do these reactions live, there is a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description to the YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I offer. You know, if you've been around the channel for a while and decide you want to take your sport to the next level, you can check those out. We'd love to have you guys come in here, join the conversations when we do these reactions live. But aside from that, you can get early access to videos. You can get priority in any kind of reaction requests you might have. Not just for the SCP universe, but for others, you know, stuff like that. So check all that out and see if any of that would have any interest for you. Regardless, thank you guys very much for taking the time out of your busy day to watch this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're having a wonderful day. We'll see you guys in the next one.